Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. I'm Josh, your host, I guess, here at Cardfight Empire. And we're going to be talking about our FutureFight Vanguard video today, which is going to be on the Pale Moon deck that is coming out of the AL4 booster, the strongest team AL4. So before we get right into that, a couple things. I have been, trying to figure out a schedule for this channel, so that is coming soon for those of you who are wondering about that. And then the second thing that I want to talk about is Bushy Road Championship Qualifier Series Atlanta. I went there this past weekend. It was a great event, well run. I made a post on Vanguardians. If you guys are part of that Facebook group, I made a post on there kind of detailing some rumors and some things that are not true and some things that are true about the event. I just like to keep it real with people, and it angers me when people are not fully understanding the gravity of what they're putting up and what it causes when it causes trouble for other people. So I kind of just quickly addressed that, but also I wanted to say to all of you that came up to me in Atlanta and said that you were really happy to meet me, or that you really enjoy my channel, or that you watch my channel and you like it. I really appreciate all of you guys. You guys just kind of pump me up to like the next level, especially when I need it sometimes. Like, had a pretty depressing loss during Atlanta where I just lost the game myself. I essentially just gave the game to my opponent, and it prevented me ultimately from making top 8 in the Premium Day 2 tournament. So I was pretty upset about that, but definitely just looking at the weekend over as a whole, it was also a just really good weekend in general. Outside of me losing, but yeah, let's get right into the FutureFight. Last thing before we get started is a shout out to my sponsor, which is going to be Dabbers Cards and Games. They'll probably be up here somewhere, on the video, so you guys will be able to see them. They are a local card shop. Can't even speak. They are a local card shop in Georgia. They have a lot of awesome employees. I believe their goal is to serve the players, not just give them cards and stuff like that, but they're also very into the player base, because it's run by young people, so they kind of understand the player base and what the player base wants a little more than the average store, in my opinion. And they also have a lot of cool merchandise, sleeves that they bring over from Japan, some of the lowest Cardfight Vanguard price sales, so definitely go check them out in the link that I provide down below. But with that being said, let's get right into the FutureFight. So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about V-BT02 Pale Moon. This is the wrong build. Hold on. I made a custom build and then a generic build, and I want to show you guys the custom build. Hopefully, if we can find it. Hopefully it's not just gone. So I will cut the video right here and then start the video up again after I build the custom build and show it to you guys. So for now, peace. What's up, guys? We're back. So I figured out that my Cardfight area deleted all my decks or something like that, so I had to rebuild a majority of my decks, but we did rebuild the Pale Moon deck. So let's get right back into that. Like I was saying, obviously this is going to be no G-Zone deck because it is for standard, and we don't have a G-Zone in standard yet. So Bushy Road. But yeah, let's get right into the build. We do run 9 grade 3s, starting off with our premier grade 3, which is Golden Beast Tamer. So Golden Beast Tamer is our main ride in the deck. Our backup ride would be Nightmare Doll Alice, but you really just want to be on Golden Beast Tamer, and if you're already on here, the only way that you really want to rewrite, in my opinion, is if you are rewriting another Golden Beast Tamer just for another Accel circle. Other than that, it's not worth rewriting into Alice just for the extra Accel circle, in my opinion. But let's talk about its 2 Vanguard only skills. So the first is the continuous skill that says if you have 5 or more units during your turn, all your front row units get plus 3,000 power. So this is the freest front row kind of power buff that we've gotten so far, and this is really good. It helps you surpass a lot of numbers and helps you hit force when you need to, and also it helps you just wreck protect into the ground more than you already do. It gives you like a lot of good numbers, and so a lot of times you don't have to play boosters to actually be hitting your opponent multiple times. So then its secondary skill is when it attacks counter boss 1, put a card from your hand into the soul and call up to 2 cards from your soul to the rearguard circle. So basically this is multi-attacking. You're allowed to just, Pale Moon's whole thing is that they use the soul kind of like a circus act. So they're, they're going into the soul, they're coming out like a trapeze act, and they're just doing multiple attacks, and that is kind of like Pale Moon's thing that they call out of the soul, whereas DI builds soul and keeps it there usually. Usually Pale Moon builds soul and then they use the soul to call units out, switch units in, etc. So this allows for multi-attack, so that's pretty good. Our backup grade 3 and our rearguard card that we use mainly for the rearguard circle is Nightmare Doll Alice. It does have Accel, so when you ride it you will get an Accel circle if you do have to ride it. It also has a Vanguard only skill if you do have to ride it that says when this card is placed, call up to 1 Workroid from your soul to the rearguard circle, and that unit gets plus 5,000 power. So the Workroid in your soul can either be Alice herself in this deck, it can be Jumping Jill. Jumping Jill is a Workroid. And then other than that, nothing else is a Workroid, so you can pretty much only call Alice or Jumping Jill from the soul with this card in this build. So I don't know, the first skill is not as good. Obviously our intention is not to ride it on Vanguard Circle anyways, so you don't really want to be riding it if you have the option of going to Golden Beast Tamer. But if you don't, this card is a meh ride, I guess. At least it gives you an Accel circle. So its rearguard skill is at the end of the battle that it attacked, you counter blast 1 and you soul blast 1, put this unit into your soul and choose a card other than grade 3 from your soul and call it to the rearguard circle. So this is very helpful, allows for multi-attacks. When this card's on the Accel circle, it's a 22k attacker because of the Accel gaining plus 10k, and then when you call your new unit, this card actually goes into the soul before you call the new unit. So when this card goes into the soul, it's freeing up a Accel circle space so that you don't have to call over and kind of minus yourself and put Alice to grave, but it can shove itself in and then call another card out, which helps for multi-attacks as well. Our last grade 3 that we're running is Comicality, but yeah, whatever it is, Chimera. This is our 3rd grade 3. It is purely used in this deck as a rearguard grade 3. You never want to ride it. It does not have Accel or any Vanguard skills, so you have no bonuses to riding this card. That is a downside of running it, but the upside of running it outweighs it or outscales the bad of running it by so much that we still run it anyways at 2. So what it does is when it's on the rearguard circle, when it attacks, you can soul blast 1 and put another rearguard into your soul. This unit gets plus 5,000 power, and then if you have not countercharged this turn, then you can countercharge from its skill. So basically you don't countercharge like at all in this build except for doing this card. So this card is really good. Only thing that I don't like about this card is that it doesn't have Accel and it costs a soul blast, but it is just a grade 3 version of Amaranth in my opinion. So it does allow for multi-attacks. A lot of cards have the ability when they go into soul, pop something out. So you put this, you put a card into soul from its ability, and then whatever else calls out something else from its own ability as well. So pretty good card for multi-attacking. Good for keeping up numbers with your opponent as well, because it is 20k attacker, assuming that you use the skill and you have Golden Beast Tamer on the board on Vanguard active. So moving into our grade 2 lineup, we actually have 4 magical box streamer. So a lot of people don't like magical box streamer, but I absolutely love this card. It allows you to get out a quote-unquote full board or like a semi-full board just by being on it on grade 2. And your opponent is pretty much giving you that second damage anyways, so by discarding a card you can essentially plus to the board. The only thing that I don't like about it is it makes your soul kind of low, so after that you do have to have like Midnight Bunnies or something like that to kind of supplement your soul. Otherwise than that, it's just, you know, a decent card. And then when it's on the Rearguard circle, if you have a magical box streamer in your soul, this unit gets plus 3,000 power. So another 12k that turns to 15k because of Golden Beast Tamer, swinging on your opponent when they're on force or something like that. So then we have 4 Amaranth Beast Tamer. We talked about this card a little bit when we talked about Chimera. So they're both they both provide more attacks to the deck because they shove cards into the soul with their own ability. They get power, and then the cards that you shove in, if it's like Jumping Jill, or sorry, if it's a Purple Trapezist, you mainly want to shove in Purple Trapezist so that Purple Trapezist can call out something else. And that just ends up being a really good combo for you. Moving into our last grade 2, we have 4 Jumping Jill. Its rearguard skill is when it's placed from the soul, you can put one of your other rearguard into the soul, choose a card other than grade 2 from your soul, and call it to the back row. So this card is pretty cool to call in the main phase, honestly, because you can call in the main phase from the soul using, like, let's say that, I know that there's a way to do it. So using like Nightmare Doll Alice, for example, like if you call Alice out and then you call Jumping Jill, you can actually move a back row rearguard into the soul and call like out a grade 3 or a grade 2 in the back row, and then just push it up to be the attacker. So that's pretty cool. Like, just because it says that it calls in the back row doesn't mean that you can't have an attacking unit come out. That just means that during the battle phase when you use this card's ability, it's pretty much just making you call a back row. But during the main phase when you use it, you can use it to get an attacker from your soul, so it's pretty cool. Then we have 4 of our preferred grade 1 ride, which is 4 Starting Presenter. Starting Presenter skill is Vanguard Rearguard when it's placed from hand, soul charge 1. And then when it's rode upon, you can put a card from your hand to the soul and soul charge 1, and then you can call the card that you soul charged to Rearguard. So this card can be good and bad. Really depends on what we soul charge using its second ability. Like, sometimes we soul charge a trigger and we're just like, you call the trigger, just to not, like, sorry guys, yeah, just to not miss out on your advantage, you call it anyways. And then moving on to our next grade 1, we have 4 Midnight Bunny. Midnight Bunnies has 2 rearguard abilities. The first one is when it boosts, you soul charge 1 mandatorily. So it is mandatory to soul charge when you boost with this card. So if someone tells you that's not mandatory, tell them that they're wrong. But the second ability is when an attack that it boosted hits. So even if you do it on the rearguard circle, it doesn't. If you attack your opponent's rearguard, you don't have to hit their Vanguard. You just have to hit with the attack in general. So if you hit Vanguard or rearguard circle, you can counterboss 1, put this unit into your soul, and then call a non-grade 1 card from your soul to rearguard circle. So this card's pretty cool because you can, like, let's say that you have like an empty column over here, you can attack with Midnight Bunny column. If it hits, Midnight Bunny moves in, call out Jumping Jill, and then you put the other attacker into your soul and call out Midnight Bunny again. And it kind of creates like a loop if your opponent keeps letting it hit. So pretty good when your opponent doesn't have that good of a defensive hand and they don't check any triggers, because you can keep attacking them until you run out of counterblasts. But yeah, solid move. Then we have 4 Purple Trapezist. What Purple Trapezist does is when it's placed into your soul from rearguard circle, you can soul blast 1 Purple Trapezist and call a card from your soul to rearguard, which means that you can also use this card itself for its cost. So once Purple Trapezist goes in, that's when its skill activates, and since it is a Purple Trapezist in the soul, you can use itself to soul blast and call out another unit, allowing you another attack. So really, really good. So then for our starter, we run 1 Entertain Messenger, literally just our draw 1 when we ride on it. And then we run 5 V-Series crits, 7 draws, 4 being the Sentinel trigger, which is Hades Hypnotist, and then 4 Candy Clown, which is our V-Series heal. So nothing much to say about that, except that we run more draws than other builds in Standard, just because this deck lacks hand advantage. So we definitely like shove cards from hand to soul with Golden Beast Tamer, so we want to Accel clans tend to be, because it's just like multi-attacking. But next we are fighting this guy called Bipolar Bear. I found that pretty funny. So we ride Starting Presenter, we attack, he damages, he attacks us for 9, we damage, we get a heal trigger. We ride Magical Box Streamer, and then we kind of rush, playing for hitting for 9, and then hitting for 17. Our opponent 1 to passes, we don't get the trigger, and then we use Amethyst skill to shove a card to soul, and he gets a heal trigger. So pretty fortunate turn for him. He does ride Zombaku during his turn, and he wanted me to hold on for a second so he could think, so he called both arresters, and then he calls a Musashi, so he calls left and right arrestor, and Musashi uses Zombaku skill to counterbalance Soul Blast, and then he's choosing not to call an arrestor, which I thought was weird, but not completely unprecedented. So he does attack for 17. We use Box Streamer to call cards out of the soul, and then he checks 2 cards, gets another heal, which I'm like blessed. And then I asked him what it was attacking. He attacks with the rear guard Musashi. So we would have had a guard with 2 cards, so we just choose to take it. And then he attacks our rear guard Amethyst, which I was telling him that him attacking with the arrestor is only a Vanguard only skill, so he would not be able to do that the way that he did. So we take it anyways. The rear guard's gone, but I just kind of wanted him to know how that worked. So we attack for 20. He does get a draw trigger, again, blessed. I even said so in the chat because I was like clearly frustrated during this game. Then he gets another draw trigger on damage check, and this game's like just getting real ridiculous really fast. But we do shove a card into our soul, call 2 cards out. And then we use Jumping Jill skill to call out, or to shove 1 in the soul, call 1 out. So we check our 2 cards. Then the only thing we can do is attack his rear guard because Vanguard's at freaking 32. So he rides Mandala Lord, calls the Million Rat, uses Million Rat skill to call a card, calls another Musashi from his hand, and then he calls the Mandala card or whatever. So the way that I was thinking, the only way I get out of this is if I get a draw trigger and he gets no triggers. So he did get a trigger and I got a draw, so I guard with 2 cards for Musashi, and then I call and I attack for 25. He actually guards this one. So then I attack, use skill to call out a card. Then I use Amethyst to put Trapezist in the drop zone and then call another card out. We use the skill of Chimera for it to attack. So our opponent's at 5, and now we attack for 23, putting a card in the soul, and then we set up for calling 2 more. So we call Alice and a Chimera again, and we check no triggers, but then we attack for 22 again, and our opponent intercepts, and then we attack for oh yeah, so our opponent couldn't even intercept because that wasn't enough shield, so our opponent's just not able to guard, and because he didn't hit any damage triggers, we eventually won that game anyways, even though he was freaking sacking us and getting double draw trigger on damage check. So the Paleman deck can just power through a lot as long as your opponent's not checking consistent damage triggers, and I mean like they have to check like 2 for it to be like, hey guys, the video cut, but yeah, like I was saying, your opponent would have to check 2 damage triggers on defensive to even kind of do anything relevant to you. But with that being said, let's get right into game 3. Game 3, we're playing in Shadow Paladin. Our opponent starts, rides Javelin, pass. We ride Purple Trapezist, then check a draw trigger, so we do hit. He rides Maka and calls, draws himself a card, and then checks Javelin. We damage check a starting presenter. We do our ride to do a rush. So we attack for 9, hoping to hit a trigger, but we don't, so we just hit Amethyst instead. He makes a mistake and thinks that our Vanguard was supposed to hit, so I tell him to just add Javelin, draw Javelin for turn, since that was going to be his draw anyways. So he rides the Dark Dictator. He puts Force on Vanguard, and then he calls Rapier and calls Javelin, using Javelin skill to draw a card, and Javelin gets 3,000 power. And then Dark Dictator attacks my Vanguard, checks 2, he checks a Blaster Rapier and a crit trigger. He puts the crit to Vanguard, power to rear guard. I don't hit any triggers on defensive, and then he puts card to soul, destroying my card, and then I check or I use the skill of the grade 2 to call 3 of my cards out. So I ride Golden Beast Tamer, I move my cards up, and I call an Alice out onto a rearguard circle. Front row gets 3k, so I attack 10k to his rapier on the side, and then I attack for 15 to his Vanguard. He takes it, no trigger. We attack with Alice for 25, and then we use the skill to call over 2 of our units that we already have, and we check 2, no trigger, but he doesn't hit trigger as well, which is good for us. Then we attack with Chimera, and then we attack with Amethyst. He guards, so he's at 5 damage, putting him in a pretty lethal spot, just like I was discussing before. But he uses the main to get the main, and then he uses Phantom Blaster Dragon to retire 3 of mine. So I retire back row, and I wanted to keep my Chimera, so he uses Maka to draw a card. He draws into a crit, which kind of sucks for him, but he does attack us with the crit. We do PD. He checks a crit trigger, and then he attacks our Vanguard with the crit. We knew that not only would we be taking the crit, but he would be counterbusting 1 to destroy our rearguard, so we didn't want to do that, so we just took the other side. So we draw, and then we call Alice to the rearguard circle. We soul blast, we soul charge 1 with Presenter. Everything is 2k because of Golden, so we attack for 25. We attack for 12 to his rapier, and then we attack with Chimera, putting card to soul, and then we attack with Golden Beast Tamer, calling out 2 cards. Our opponent no guards, and we check a crit, so we put crit to Vanguard and power to the Alice. Our opponent checks a 6 damage heal, but like I said, it was a crit, so he takes 2 damage and he just ends up losing the game. So with that being said, that has been our FutureFight Vanguard series for the Pale Moon deck. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a thumbs up on the video to show me that you would like these kind of videos in the future. Comment down below what your favorite build of the deck is, or something that you've been trying out, or something that you find interesting. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. And if you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe and click the bell button next to the subscribe button so that you don't have to miss any Cardfight videos from me going forward. And also, if you're interested in anime or video games, I would definitely check out our second channel down below in the description. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.